Fantasy Baseball on Deck, everybody. This is Austin, and this is the YouTube channel that you follow because I watch baseball until 2 in the morning so that you don't have to. First reminder before I start talking about anything actually tangible is if you want to be good at fantasy baseball, kind of like what I just said, make sure that you're watching fantasy base, you're watching real baseball at all times, when it's on, whether it's passively or actively. The more that you watch, the more knowledgeable that you'll be. And again, I pay for this MLBTV.com account, and I am way better off for it than not. And actually, what I just picked up, even just by watching this late night Seattle and Red Sox game, is that Tanner Houck, one of my main guys that I have a big proponent of, is actually closing for the Red Sox tonight. And then even, Garrett Whitlock just went on the IL. I thought that maybe Tanner would get one of his starting rotation spots back, but I guess we will wait to see. So as we transition to more tangible work, I want to go over to my bona fides to make sure that I am staying successful as I give you guys advice. Since I've talked to you last, I've incurred another unlucky loss again. So I've dropped to 6-2. I was at 5-0 to start the year, and then now 6-2. But really what that boils down to is the significance of injuries and how if they pile up at any point in time, you're just kind of handicapped, handcuffed, and not able to produce. So what do we want to really focus on? I'm not worried about this record because I just need one more. I need to be at the same level, if not more wins ahead of this guy, and I'll be fine because I'm winning. I'm doing just fine in points. And what do I want to focus on with points? You got points for. I am 200 points ahead of the 6th place guy, and this kind of like says it all, right? I'm in 2nd place with the most points by a significant margin, 200 points, and the next 2 best people in my league are 6th and 8th place. So that's really it's a matter of bad luck. Sometimes it happens, but again, if you're always scoring the most points in the league, then things are always going to work out for you. And really, all you have to do is squeeze in. Now, we always want to win the league because usually the regular season champ gets at least their money back or however your league is set up. But points for is most important. And how do we get points for? How do we establish who is worth more than the next guy, with these really kind of limited amount of stats? Well, I want to focus on, again, kind of like what we talk about. We'll go to pitching first. And if we go to the innings pitched, make sure that you're getting quality guys that are lasting well into their games. We talked about earlier, kind of their draft portion, where you'll have a lot of guys that are like early into their career and they have pitching limits. They'll get pulled at 70 pitches, 80 pitches, and that's kind of frustrating because that's just that's points left on the table sort of thing. And then next we want to look at the strikeouts. So as we talk about each out that someone incurs, there's a bonus that comes along with that. If you're playing ESPN standard leagues, it's 1 point for an out, it's 1 point for a strikeout. So if it's an out put out via a strikeout, it's 2 points. It's a 100% increase. It's a 200% difference in points. So if you make sure that you have low ERA, high strikeout guys, you're always going to come out on top. Can't necessarily you can't do anything about wins. Wins are so determined by run support and things that are out of our pitcher's control. So you never really want to focus on wins. And just by chance, I'm currently 4th place. I could have a good day and jump up to 1st because everybody's just 3 ahead of me as of right now. But it's something that we can't really control. But we can also control that we focus on good quality closers. And I have 34 saves in comparison to the next guy at 30. There's only 3 closers in the game that I really trust, and I always try to both draft and or trade for. And it's Liam Hendricks and it's Josh Hader by far and away. And then we can start talking about like the Jordan Romanos of the world. And now that Trevor Rogers has gotten his head out of his ass and he's in San Diego, he's been pretty valuable. But we'll make sure that you have quality starters because this is a guy. If you have an off week where you don't have anybody start on a Monday or Tuesday, meaning that they don't start twice within the same matchup, because there's 5 days usually between each start, unless you're a Padres starting pitcher where there's 6 days in between because they're carrying a 6-man rotation. Usually the rule of thumb is that you want to make sure that if you're going into a big lineup, a big matchup, that you have a lot of pitchers loaded on, Monday and Tuesday, and you can't really control that. It's kind of luck of the draw. But if you've got really good closers that are going out every day, they're available to score points for you every day. And, as you play ESPN standard leagues, you guys understand how easy it is for a team, a pitcher, to incur negative points against you. In a negative 15-point day is a huge negative. But like if you're able to get a solid closer who's earning 10 to 15 points per save opportunity, then it always negates it, and you always end up ahead. So those are the pitching stats that you always want to look at. Strikeouts being the the number one bonus, and it makes the most out of each out. And then again, go back to batting, and you can't ever necessarily take the stats on here are different across than both my leagues, but we'll look at these anyways. You want to look at the the runs. It's not really something you can control. Once you get on base, you're now reliant on someone else to get you home. And if I'm looking at RBIs, now I'm not necessarily doing the best at RBIs, but at the same time, you're a batter that requires someone to be on base before you get up. That's not something you can control. You somewhat can control where we want stolen bases, and there's a risk with stolen bases, so I don't consider it it's a risky stat. It is an independent stat, but that's not something that we can, that we want to necessarily depend on. Stolen bases are going to put you in a better position than not, but they aren't going to win you the league. What is going to win you the league, and if we go over to this next league, good again, points for. That's what you want to focus on. If we look at just the rank itself, I'm in second place, but I am 600 points ahead of this person. I fear them not. I am almost 1,000 points ahead of the third place person, and so down the row. You'll always be in a good spot as long as you're scoring the most points. That makes sense. But what I was about to say in regards to batters, how can we tell who is a good batter and who's not? We want to look at the total base count. So if we look at the stats over here, so total bases means that when your player gets a hit, whether they got a single, a double, a triple, or a home run, there's only a 4-point scale per at bat. That's either a 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's essentially is counting your hit. What are you creating? What offense are you creating on your own? So to better illustrate kind of the importance of total bases and having hitters that aren't only just hitting for average, but hitting for power along with that, because the more power that they incur, the more opportunities that they're going to create for themselves, both for themselves when they're on the base pass, but also scoring players, not only from necessarily second base on a single, but getting players in from first base on 2 outs with an extra base hit is just that is the bonus of each at bat. You get to only hit once out of every 9 batters. You want a guy that's really driving the ball to all parts of the field, because that is the bonus, kind of like a strikeout. With your at bat, you got to hit, but you hit it so much harder than the next guy. Roll to the fence, you got to double. It's a 200% 100% increase on top of just what was just the single before. And kind of what best illustrates this is Luis Arraez is a utility guy for the Minnesota Twins, and he's a fan favorite. Every single year he hits above 300. Super awesome on base percentage. Right now he is currently at a clip of for the last 7 days, he's at a clip of 600 on base percentage with a 529 batting average. That's crazy. If you look for the entire season, he's hitting 359 with almost a 50-50 he gets on base, or whether he goes back to the back to the dugout. I mean, you think about every time you go up to bat, how valuable is it to have someone who is either going to get on base 50% of the time, or or get out, sort of thing. And he doesn't strike out. So if we look at his strikeouts, it doesn't show here, but it should show over here. He has 16 strikeouts on the entire year, across 170 at bats. So it's someone who's not going to incur negative points per se for you. But what's really important here And though he is having a good year, and I will never ever down the fact that he is hitting 359, and I don't think that's necessarily sustainable, but he always hits above 300, so we can expect this. But why isn't he rosterable? He's most rosterable because he's flexible. If he was only a second baseman, only a first baseman, only an outfielder, what have you, I don't think he's rosterable because we look at his total bases. He's a single machine. So what that means is Luis Urias is almost completely reliant on people either being in scoring position for him to earn an RBI, those bonus points, or he has to get on base and then be hit home. Now, he has 2 stolen bases on the year. He averages 5 or less per season, doesn't steal a lot of bases. He's not a fast player. So this is a player who is very, very dependent. He is hitting almost 600. It's like 530 average for the last 7 days. And he's only scored 22 points. He did have 1 home run on the season, his second overall of the entire year, over 170 at bats. But if we multiply that to what is of a full-time player, this is a player who's going to hit 10 or less home runs. So it's just not a player you're getting a lot of bonuses out of. He's always on base, but he's so reliant on his other teammates to get him in. So that's something really important. So we look at how many hits has he had on the year. He's had a ton of hits. He's had, for the entire season, he's had 61 hits on the entire year, equating to 138 points. So if we just look at just a simple like visual here, he's got 61 hits on the entire year. If we look at just who's the most valuable player in free agency, Christian Walker. I have no interest in Christian Walker per se, but he has only 40 hits. So he has 21 less hits than Luis Urias, and he has how many more? 94 compared to 72. So that means just the difference in power, that you can see the point difference. Luis Urias has 21 more hits, and and Christian Walker has struck out 48 times compared to 16 times, and he is still 14 points more valuable. Wait. 14 points more valuable than Luis Urias, who is hitting 359 for the season. Christian Walker hitting right at 200 for the entire season. So this is really this is what plays. You can't just look at batting average. You got to look at total bases. How much value are they creating for themselves instead of being reliant on others to get them on the base paths and around home? So that's something that's always helped me. It's always put me in a good place. And if I check my my standings, I go to total bases on both fronts. I'm in first place in this league. Again, I'm scoring the most amount of points. And this is an ESPN standard league, so being ahead of second place by 300 plus points is a lot. And if I go to my runs, can't necessarily control that. I'm doing okay with runs in that regard. My RBIs, doing okay, second place, whatever. Not necessarily a stat that we can control. It's just dependent on who's on base before our player gets up to bat, and then who comes in once they actually get on base. But again, total bases just has to do with how many singles, doubles, triples, home runs you get. It doesn't take into equate anything else. How efficient, how powerful are you throughout your plate appearances? And then so that's how you can really decipher between who's a good batter and who's rosterable and who's not. You can't just look at batting average. So then we look at innings pitched. We got to make sure we have guys that are going out there every day, that are dependable, that don't have a ton of innings restrictions. And then again, once they're getting outs, if we have 3 outs in an inning, we want to get strikeouts, because the 3 outs per inning, if we turn them into strikeouts, it turns into six points per inning. And multiply that throughout the 5 innings, the 6 innings that they're out there. Obviously, they're going to incur hits and they're going to incur a couple earned runs, but those strikeouts are always the great buffer to keep people safe, from those negative outings. Even if they take a loss, if you get a bunch of strikeouts, it'll keep you safe. Look at Dylan Cease's numbers. Just look at his profile. He's given up a ton of earned runs recently, but because he's going out there and he's throwing 8-10 strikeouts per game, he's not taking negative hits because he's throwing so many strikeouts. It's just a safety buffer. And again, that strikeout number, if we go scroll over here, I'm 64 strikeouts ahead of the second place person, and so on. So again, and then like make sure that we always make sure that we're doing well in saves, just because it's bonus points every day. We usually have starting pitching limits. This keeps you both from not hitting your starting pitching limit, and then also incurring those bonus points for save opportunities, and make sure that you have really dependable guys at that position. So what are we on to next? We talked about total bases and why Luis Urias is kind of a statistical anomaly and not really worth, the point. If you are a Luis Urias owner, he's very valuable because you can put him just about anywhere. But if there's somebody that's like gung-ho about batting average and looks at Luis Urias and is super about him, I would trade him in an instant, because he's just not a super independent batter. So let's go to what I really wanted to talk about today. It's the IL, your injured list advice. So if I go to my my team here, and I have a player that's coming off of IL tomorrow. So if I scroll over to tomorrow being Saturday, I have Shane Baz right here, who is supposed to debut tomorrow. He's one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. He would have been drafted in the top 100 probably if he came into the start of the regular season healthy. Got hurt during training camp, minor elbow issue, and he's ready to go. He struck out, I think, 11 batters in like 3 innings. Three point whatever innings last time he was in AAA, even though that 10 over 4.1 and 79 pitches. This is a really quality player, somebody that I stashed. So we always want to make sure that we're maxing out our IL spots. So I have 3 IL spots. So I have 2 pitchers down here, and I've got Taylor Ward up here as my outfielder who's gotten hurt. Unfortunately, he's obviously been my all-star of the year and my guy that I've promoted since the year. Hope that he comes back soon. But before I get sidetracked, I want to talk about Shane Baz. So what do? I have currently I've cleared out a spot. I dropped Ashby, I think, a lot of him, and I'm going to plan on getting him back, but because he just had a negative outing, I don't think that he's necessarily going to get picked up, so I was able to drop him. And then also Jacob Junis just seemed like he pulled his hamstring during this game today. Even he's going to earn 15 points for today, but he might go on the IL. We'll see. But what you might think to do here is, okay, I've got Shane Baz. He's going to pitch tomorrow. Immediately slot him into your empty spot. That's the wrong thing to do, only because once you take Shane Baz out of Manage IL, once I activate Shane Baz into this this healthy roster, so if I activate him, it's the IL, done. All right. So now, if I go to my roster again for tomorrow, I now all of a sudden have this IL empty spot. And it's like, okay, well, because I moved Shane into my starting lineup right away, I now have this empty IL spot. And if I want to replace it with a player, which I always want to make sure I have players on my IL spot, because it's just bonus value at any point that you hold on to for later. I can't add a player. I can't go to these players available. And if I go to health and I go to IL eligible, and for whatever, if I wanted to add Mitch Haniger, I can't just simply slot him into this empty IL slot. I would have to drop one of my players that I value, and that's not what I want to do. So how do we get around this? So if I cancel and I go to manage my IL again, and I want to put Shane Baz back to my IL, okay? So keep him there. Keep him on your IL. I know that he's starting tomorrow. Keep him on your IL. This is what I'm going to do now. I specifically want to, and if you want to go look at, make sure that you're getting IL players, go to their health, and you go to IL eligible, and it'll bring you only unhealthy hurt people, and it'll bring you like the top people available per se. So like I either want Mitch Haniger, which has always been a solid player. He's still hitting in the batting cage. but that's not who I came here for. I am going after Kyle Lewis. So I think that a lot of Kyle Lewis. So I look up Kyle Lewis. Kyle Lewis is my player. He's on the 7-day IL. So when he was up earlier this year, in just a couple of games that he already hit a home run. He's averaging 3.9 average, like points per game. So I want to add Kyle Lewis. What happens if I add Kyle Lewis? It goes through, right? So there's no issues. I don't have to drop anyone because Kyle Lewis is taking a healthy slot that's available because my IL's already filled. Now, because Kyle Lewis is hurt, he's going to be shown, if it just would automatically scroll to my tomorrow's roster, it's going to show Kyle Lewis on my bench. Well, now I do what I did earlier where I slot in Shane Baz, manage my IL, to the IL here, switch, cheated the system. Because ESPN's because ESPN recognizes that Shane Baz hasn't come off the IL yet, even though he is projected to start tomorrow. He's the projecting starting pitcher tomorrow. He is currently still labeled as hurt, similarly to like Steven Strasburg earlier this week, debuted on Thursday. If you know a player is coming off the IL and starting, like especially a pitcher, if they're going to start later that week, switch them out with a player that's hurt, but do this exact process so you don't have to drop any players that you actually value. So that's about the show today, besides talking about the two starting pitchers that were relief pitchers just converted that I really think you should put an investment into. And I've talked about these guys before, but specifically Spencer Strider is a guy that I believe wholeheartedly in. He's only gotten 3 opportunities to start so far. Today he started against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh, but across 5.2 innings pitched, he had 8 strikeouts. Overall, can't control what his run support is, but if he didn't even have run support, it would have a 20-point outing. That's the bonus. That's the big thing about strikeouts. So 25 points over his last 3 starts that he's been starting. He has 27 innings pitched, 27.1 innings pitched, 27 strike. Or no, sorry, guys. I'm reading the next player. Across his first 3 starts, he's had 14 innings pitched. He's only given up 4 runs. He's had 20 strikeouts. So 14 innings pitched, 20 strikeouts. That's the rate that you always want, because at that rate, that clip is only going to spread out and get larger as the season goes on. And he's had 36 points overall in his first 3 starts, which is averaging 12 points per outing, which is really, really good. Okay, so Spencer Strider, he's only owned in 16.7% of leagues. I guarantee this is a really great move that you would make. I made it long ago when he was still in the bullpen, coming out of the bullpen as a long reliever. He's meant to be a starter. That's what the organization wants to do with him. Add Spencer Strider if he's not already gone. And then the next guy I want to talk about is Jeffrey Springs. So Jeffrey Springs also started out as a relief pitcher tag, has now converted to the Tampa Bay Rays starting rotation. And so, since he was relied upon to start back on the 15th of May, Jeffrey Springs has done extremely well. For the entire season, he has a 1.62 ERA, which is obviously incredible. I don't have to talk about that. But since starting back on 5/15, he's had 5 starts. And he's had, in his 5 starts, he's had 27.1 innings pitched, 27 strikeouts across those 27 innings pitched. So he's right at that cusp. And he's been kind of a little bit inconsistent with the strikeouts, but usually he's right at about the amount of innings pitched that he goes equals the amount of strikeouts, and that's fine. You don't want pitchers below that number per se, because then they're relying on wins. Jeffrey Springs is an independent player. He's striking out people as many people as he has innings pitched plus. So he's at 27 and 27. He's at 73 points over the total over those first 5 starts out of the bullpen. Now in the starting rotation, and he's averaged 14.6 points per starting game. So, this is a guy that I have a lot of faith in. He's 30% owned across leagues, and I think that he could really, really boost your team. So that's my show for today, guys. I really appreciate your support and patience with me and getting these videos out. But that's the end of the show.